The most expensive misunderstanding intelligent people make is not about money. It is about what their intelligence is for. That is the real problem. From childhood, smart people are trained to believe that intelligence is a winning trait in itself. Answer correctly, solve quickly, understand deeply, perform well inside complex systems. If you do that long enough, the world is supposed to reward you proportionally. That is the promise hanging quietly behind grades, credentials, honors, and elite labels. It sounds reasonable. It is also incomplete enough to trap a life, because intelligence and wealth are not the same game, and the person who confuses them can spend decades building admiration while somebody less impressive on paper builds ownership. That is the divide. So let me give you the one mother line that everything in this story serves. Smart people stay financially average when they use their intelligence to optimize systems they do not own instead of building leverage inside systems they do. That is the line. Not stupidity winning, not intelligence failing, not luck alone allocation, because once you understand that, the entire social map changes. School, employment, prestige, caution, perfectionism, even the emotional need to be correct, all start looking different. They stop being neutral virtues and start revealing a structural question. Is your intelligence compounding for you or for somebody else's machine? That is the question that matters. Now let me show you the mechanisms. The first mechanism is institutional intelligence. Society's first definition of smart is usually built inside institutions. A smart child answers correctly. A smart student performs well under evaluation. A smart adult handles complexity, absorbs information quickly, and solves difficult problems inside an existing framework. That is institutional intelligence. It is real intelligence. It is also highly specific intelligence. The skill set being rewarded is not random. It is pattern recognition under fixed rules, memory, abstraction, precision, and compliance with the format of the test or the expectations of the system. A smart student learns how to succeed inside designed environments. That can absolutely lead to strong careers. But wealth creation often rewards something adjacent rather than identical: ambiguity tolerance, rapid action, persuasion, asymmetrical bets, ownership positioning, and the willingness to operate without a clean grading rubric. That is why the first confusion begins so early. A child who keeps winning the school game starts assuming that future systems will reward the same kind of excellence in the same proportion. Later, that child becomes the gifted analyst, engineer, doctor, lawyer, researcher, or specialist who enters adulthood with powerful cognitive tools, but with an operating assumption that performance inside the machine will naturally convert into long-term financial superiority. That assumption is where the mismatch starts, because institutions often reward smart people with stability, prestige, and employability. Wealth usually rewards leverage, control, and ownership. Those are not the same rewards. Now let us move to the second mechanism. I call it correctness addiction. This is where intelligence becomes psychologically expensive. When a person is praised for being right over many years, accuracy becomes identity. Being the one who understands better, sees the flaw, catches the nuance, or predicts the downside becomes a private source of self-worth that can produce brilliant thinkers. It can also produce people who are extremely uncomfortable acting before certainty feels sufficient. That is correctness addiction. Wealth, however, often grows through imperfect movement. Start before the plan is fully elegant. Launch before the model is complete. Buy before the story is socially comfortable. Negotiate before you feel fully entitled. Iterate instead of proving your brilliance in advance. The average person starting a small business may not fully understand all the market theory behind what they are doing, but they may still act, learn, fail, pivot, and improve. The smart person may keep refining the model, improving the deck, reading another report, running another projection, and waiting for confidence that never quite arrives because the downside scenarios are now too vivid. That is the hidden cost of being highly analytical. Intelligence shows you more paths to failure. Sometimes that is wisdom. Sometimes it is paralysis wearing the mask of sophistication. The market does not always reward the most intellectually complete answer. It often rewards the person willing to move through incomplete information with tolerable risk and good enough timing. That is a very different emotional game. Now let us move to the third mechanism. I call it employment capture. One reason intelligent people stay average is not that they lack opportunity. It is that they are exceptionally employable. That sounds like an advantage because it is also a trap. Employment capture happens when a person's intelligence makes them too valuable inside someone else's structure to feel enough pressure to leave. They become the reliable problem solver, the efficient manager, the exceptional analyst, the specialist who keeps the machine working better than it otherwise would. The organization notices promotions happen, responsibility increases, salary improves, prestige accumulates, and yet the financial ceiling remains structurally different from ownership. That is the trap. The smart employee may help optimize a business worth hundreds of millions while personally receiving a salary banded by budgets and hierarchy. They are rewarded for improving systems they do not own. The owner is rewarded because the system itself becomes more valuable. Over years, that difference compounds brutally. The employee scales usefulness. The owner scales claims. That is why some intelligent people wake up in middle age with admirable careers and surprisingly fragile balance sheets. They were so good at making themselves valuable to institutions that they never fully confronted how little of the upside institutions were ever going to hand them. That is employment capture. Comfort became the container, prestige became the bribe, and ownership never arrived in proportion to contribution. Now let us move to the fourth mechanism. I call it social leverage deficit. A lot of smart people quietly underestimate the skills that actually move capital persuasion, negotiation, relationship building, confidence projection, storytelling, trust creation, deal energy. These are often dismissed as softer, less pure, or less intellectually serious than analytical excellence. That attitude feels understandable inside academic or technical cultures. It is economically costly in the real world. That is social leverage deficit. Money moves through people. Assets change hands through people. Introductions, partnerships, customers, investors, hires, clients, and opportunities all arrive through human trust long before they arrive through abstract merit alone. An average individual who becomes comfortable selling, negotiating, following up, building networks, and creating confidence can end up with access to opportunities that a more brilliant but socially detached person never even sees. The gifted individual may know far more. The socially fluent builder may control more flow. This is one reason mediocre salespeople sometimes out-earn brilliant specialists. It is not that the world hates intelligence. It is that capital cares about movement. If knowledge stays private, elegant, and emotionally sealed, it can be admired without being monetized. If basic competence is paired with strong human leverage, it often converts faster into money than superior intellect paired with isolation. That is why I say intelligence without transaction power remains theoretical. Now let us move to the fifth mechanism. I call it prestige substitution. This is one of the most subtle and socially rewarded traps on the whole map. Intelligent people are often drawn toward high-status fields that deliver admiration, complexity, and symbolic recognition. Academia, law, medicine, engineering research, elite professional tracks, think tanks, technical mastery. These paths can be honorable and valuable. They can also quietly train a person to substitute prestige for financial structure. That is prestige substitution. Prestige feels like progress because society teaches you to read it that way. A title, a degree, a respected institution, an advanced role, these all produce emotional reinforcement. You feel seen, you feel advanced. You feel that you must be moving up because the symbols around you look elevated. But symbolic elevation is not the same thing as scalable ownership. A person can accumulate honor without equity. They can gain status without asymmetry. They can become difficult to replace while remaining financially dependent on institutions they do not control. Meanwhile, a less admired person may build a plumbing company, a small logistics firm, a franchising path, a real estate portfolio, a service network, or some other unglamorous system that compounds much more aggressively over time than the prestigious career ever will. That is why society confuses smartness with wealth creation so often. It measures esteem and assumes the balance sheet must follow. It frequently does not. Now let us move to the sixth mechanism. I call it ambiguity flight. Highly intelligent people are often more comfortable in environments with clear evaluation metrics. That is how they learn to win. Grades, rubrics, research standards, promotion criteria, professional qualifications, defensible logic, defined benchmarks. Those systems reward them early and often, so naturally they trust them. Wealth creation, however, often emerges in environments where the score is fuzzy for a long time. No one grades your new business idea. No one certifies that your side asset is worth pursuing. No professor tells you that your small distribution system will eventually become powerful. There is no formal proof that your risk was intelligent before the market validates it. That is terrifying for someone whose identity has been built inside legible evaluation structures. That is ambiguity flight. The person retreats from uncertainty back toward the professionally legible path because it feels rational, stable, and socially comprehensible. Meanwhile, the more average actor tolerates the fog, launches something ugly, keeps moving, and slowly accumulates real control in a place where nobody was awarding points at the beginning. This is why smart people often look back and realize that they stayed in elegant structures too long. Not because they lacked ambition, because the unclear path felt insufficiently defensible. That is the cost of needing too much institutional confirmation before movement. Now, let us move to the seventh mechanism. I call it leverage reallocation. This is the real solution. The answer is not to become less intelligent. The answer is to point intelligence somewhere else. Leverage reallocation means redirecting analytical power away from pure correctness inside existing systems and toward ownership, multiplication, negotiation, distribution, cash flow, and long horizon positioning. In plain English, it means learning to study assets, incentives, and scalable structures with the same seriousness you once brought to grades, credentials, and technical mastery. That changes everything. A smart person who understands compounding, equity, systems ownership, market timing, tax structure, negotiation, and the commercial value of relationships becomes very dangerous. In the best sense, the problem was never intelligence. The problem was that intelligence had been conscripted into becoming indispensable to somebody else's machine rather than into building a machine of its own. That is why I say the issue is allocation, not capability. The same person who became a flawless corporate optimizer can become a strong owner if they tolerate more ambiguity, loosen the need to be right before acting, and stop trading all of their leverage for institutional comfort. That is the pivot. Now I want to force the identity shift, because without it, this still sounds like social commentary instead of a real operating philosophy. Stop thinking like a smart person who deserves more. Start thinking like a leverage allocator. A smart person who deserves more asks why recognition has not converted. A leverage allocator asks where my intelligence is currently compounding and who owns the result. A smart person who deserves more wants the system to notice their value. A leverage allocator wants ownership, asymmetry, and control. A smart person who deserves more optimizes for admiration. A leverage allocator optimizes for multiplication. That is the stronger identity. Because once you think that way, you stop being hypnotized by the fact that you are capable. Capability is not enough. Capability must be attached to the right node in the system. The ownership node, the leverage node, the equity node, the distribution node, or it will keep feeding someone else's rise more than your own. And now, let me give you the operating system plainly. First, stop confusing academic or institutional intelligence with wealth skill. They overlap, but they are not the same game. Second, notice whether being right has become emotionally safer than moving correctness can quietly become a prison. Third, do not let employability become your ceiling. A strong salary is still labor dependence if ownership never grows beside it. Fourth, build social leverage deliberately. Relationships, negotiation, confidence, and trust are not optional side skills in wealth creation. Fifth, do not substitute prestige for equity. Titles feed identity. Assets feed independence. Sixth, train yourself to tolerate ambiguity long enough for ownership to form. The best opportunities rarely arrive with grading rubrics. Seventh, redirect intelligence toward leverage, toward systems you own, toward cash flow, toward things that can keep paying when you are not actively proving yourself. That is the heart of it. Smart people do not stay poor because intelligence is weak. They stay average because intelligence is often rewarded for the wrong uses early in life. The system praises them for accuracy, reliability, and institutional excellence. The market pays most aggressively for leverage, ownership, and movement. That is the mismatch. Now, let me end where this really matters. You can keep using your intelligence to become more indispensable to structures you do not own. You can keep optimizing for titles, certainty, and admiration while average builders accumulate equity around you. You can keep calling caution prudence even when it is really fear of leaving the environments that once rewarded you. Or you can do the harder thing. You can reassign your intelligence. You can study ownership with the seriousness you once gave grades. You can tolerate imperfection long enough to build leverage. You can stop asking whether you look smart and start asking whether your decisions are multiplying anything you will still own in 10 years. That is the threshold, because the difference between admiration and wealth grows savage over time. That is the mirror. Look into it carefully. If your intelligence is still mostly being used to improve systems someone else controls, then, however impressive you are, the long compounding arc may still belong to them more than to you. That is the part smart people need to see before it is expensive to keep missing it.